The story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It was a long time ago, when dwarves still worked the mines in some parts of Europe. There was a queen who longed to have a child. One day, as she was sitting by the window sewing, she looked out of the window and the snow was falling, pure white snow. And she said to herself, wouldn't it be lovely to have a daughter whose skin was as pure white as the falling snow? And she looked at the black ebony wood, the window frame, and said, wouldn't it be lovely to have a daughter whose hair was as black as the ebony of the window frame? And as she was sewing, she pricked her finger and made it bleed, and drops of blood fell, and she said, wouldn't it be lovely to have a daughter whose lips were as red as my own blood? Someone must have heard her, because months and months later, the queen gave birth to a daughter whose skin was as white as falling snow, whose hair was as black as the ebony window frame, and whose lips were as red as her mother's blood. But before the year had turned once more, the queen passed away. And although her husband the king mourned for her, he felt that his princess, his daughter, needed a mother. So he married again, not knowing that the new queen, his new wife, Snow White's stepmother, was a powerful enchantress. And although she was a beautiful woman, she had a dark heart and dark knowledge. Stepmother, the new queen, had a magical mirror. And whenever she looked into the mirror, she would ask it, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And every day the mirror replied to her, you are my queen. Time passed, and Snow White grew, and every day she seemed to grow more beautiful. And not only was she fair of face, she had a good heart and was kind and sincere. When Snow White celebrated her 7th birthday, her stepmother looked at the mirror, as she did most days, and said, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? And the mirror said, Snow White is fairer than you are. So the stepmother began to grow envious. But after some time she became green with envy. For whenever she asked the mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? The mirror replied, Snow White is more fair than you. So the queen, unable to bear this any longer, arranged for a huntsman to take Snow White out into the forest, and there he was to kill her and open her body and take out her heart and her lungs and bring them back to the queen. So Snow White went with the huntsman into the forest, further into the dark forest than she had ever been, and the huntsman took out his long knife And Snow White knew what he intended to do, but she begged. She begged the huntsman not to kill her. Not only was she beautiful, but kind and sincere. And the huntsman didn't have the heart to kill her. And he thought, the wild beasts of the forest will do my work for me. And I can lay each night with a clear conscience. So Snow White stumbled her way off through the dark forest. And the huntsman killed a wild boar and skinned it and took back the lungs and the liver to the stepmother, to the wicked queen. And she ate them, believing that they had come from Snow White. And Snow White, she stumbled her way through the forest, found a little cottage. And there it was, a tiny little child-sized cottage with small windows and a low door. And being cold and hungry, she let herself in. And there, at the long table, were 7 places. There were 7 chairs, there were 7 plates and 7 forks and 7 knives. And she sat down at each of the chairs in turn, and she moved something. And she moved each plate and moved each cup. And being so tired, she went upstairs and went to the end of the bedroom and lay down on the 7th bed. And there she fell asleep. So the sun had set and the moon was rising when the owner of the cottage returned. They were, of course, dwarves who had been out mining all day. And they were surprised to find that things had been moved in their cottage. And yet when they went upstairs and they saw Snow White laying there asleep on the bed, and she was so beautiful, her skin so white, her hair so black, her lips so red, and they could tell that she was also of good heart, they forgot their anger and they said, live with us. For Snow White told them the story of the huntsman and how she had found her way alone through the dark wood, and of course they were moved by the story. So Snow White took care of the cottage and mended the clothes, and she knitted for them, because dwarves like a hand-knitted jumper. I'm wearing a hand-knitted jumper. Do you like my hand-knitted jumper? I did this. I knitted this myself. Knitting is a wonderful thing, by the way. It's a very useful skill. Very relaxing. So Snow White knitted little jumpers for the dwarves. And there came a day when the wicked queen asked the mirror her old question. And the mirror replied, Snow White lives. Snow White lives with the dwarfs in the forest. So the queen, who was, as we said earlier, also an enchantress and who could work dark magic, disguised herself. Disguised, or perhaps she could also shapeshift into an old peddler woman, wrapped a shawl around herself. And she found the cottage by her magic art. And she knocked on the door. And she showed Snow White the beautiful ribbons that she had for sale. And she used the ribbon to lace Snow White very tightly. So tight that she couldn't breathe properly. And when the dwarfs came back, they found her laying on the floor with tight laces around, and they undid the laces so that Snow White could breathe properly again. And then she woke up, and then the dwarf said it wasn't a peddler, it's your stepmother. Don't trust strangers. Don't trust anyone who comes to the door. When we're out at work all day, do not open the door to anyone. Snow White listened to their good advice. As of course we all listen to good advice. And life carried on. Snow White cooking, knitting and sewing during the day until the dwarfs came back. Perhaps in the evenings they sat by the fire telling stories. I like to think so. I think dwarfs like stories. Until the Queen asked her mirror the same question, and the mirror told her Snow White still lives. She still lives with the dwarfs. So, the Queen had a knowledge of poisons, and she had a beautiful comb that she covered in poison, and she took it to the cottage. And Snow White said, "I'm not allowed to open the door to strangers." And the Queen, in a different disguise, said, "I won't come in. So come and stand outside and I will comb your hair for you." So the Queen combed Snow White's hair with the poisoned comb, and after a little time Snow White fell down as the poison went to work, and the Queen left the comb in Snow White's hair and then made her way back to her own home, to the castle. So when the dwarves returned home from the mine that day, they found Snow White laying there as if asleep by the doorway. And they found the poison comb and they took it out. And after a little while, Snow White woke up and they said, "You need to be more careful. You're far too kind, you're far too trusting." Time passed. Snow White with her knitting and her sewing and her work, the dwarves at work in the mine, and the stepmother listened to the mirror as it said, "Snow White is the fairest of them all, and Snow White still lives with the dwarfs in the cottage in the forest." The Queen was cunning. Of course she was. She was an enchantress. And she found an apple which was green on one side, red on the other. And so the Queen took some of her poison and poisoned the red side of the apple. She found another disguise, went to the cottage for a third time, and convinced Snow White, as they talked through the open window, to take a bite out of the red side of the apple. So by the time the dwarfs got back from their day's work in the mine, they found Snow White laying on the floor, and this time there was nothing they could do as the poison went to work. And she was so lovely and so beautiful. They couldn't bear to bury her. They made a glass coffin and laid her in the glass coffin and took it up to the top of the mountain. And they took it in turns to sit by Snow White's body and guard it. And after a time, an owl came to join them and made sure that none of the wild beasts of the forest ate her body. And a raven came and joined them and made sure that none of the wild beasts of the forest ate her body. And finally a dove came. And so Snow White lay there, her body still as beautiful as ever it had been. And one day, a prince who was out hunting went past and saw Snow White's beautiful and lovely body, with her skin as white as snow, and her hair as black as ebony, and her lips as red as blood. And he fell in love with her. And he said to the dwarf who was guarding her body that time, I have to take her with me. I cannot rest without this beautiful woman. And the dwarf explained that Snow White was in fact a princess. And the prince had his servants lift the glass coffin and began to carry it off. But as they did, one of the servants stumbled, and as he stumbled, the coffin moved, and the piece of apple that was in Snow White's throat was dislodged, and she woke up in the glass coffin. And as her eyes met the eyes of the handsome prince, of course they fell in love. And of course they returned to the prince's kingdom. And of course they had a lovely wedding. And of course all the 7 dwarfs were guests of honour at their wedding. And of course the evil queen, the wicked stepmother, learned through her enchantress arts of the wedding of the handsome prince and beautiful Snow White. So she dressed herself in her finest clothes and went to the castle to attend the wedding. But there, in the fire, was a pair of iron slippers already heating. And the enchantress, the queen, was made to wear the iron slippers and danced herself to death at the wedding of Snow White and the handsome prince. But of course, the prince and the princess. Come on, this is your line. You do this bit. Yes, lived. Go on. Happily ever after. Because that's how we like fairy stories to end, don't we? With a happy ever after. Of course we do. So there are lots more. Brothers Grimm stories and lots of other stories. There are Robin Hood stories, all sorts of stories on my channel. So please do subscribe because it makes it easier to. It does make it easier to find my stories, and my stories like it when you listen to them. So do subscribe and keep finding my stories and keep listening and learn the stories and tell them yourselves. Because stories like to be told and they like to travel. So, hope to see you again soon. Take care.